Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. Got Colin Camphy in the building. We are here to talk Texas. Colin, what a beautiful thing to say. Texas makes it to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. We are in the Sweet 16. We're going to preview the Texas, starting with Xavier to see if we can get to the Elite Eight. And we're going to talk a lot of Texas on this episode. Matchups, whole bit, what we saw from Xavier against Pitt, as well as Kennesaw State, and what we've seen from them in the Big East this year, and how we feel our guys will do. Also, we will talk about the tournament in general, and talk about our terrible brackets. Colin, where are you in the bracket contest right now?
I think I'm tied for 56 right now in the Fanatic Subs bracket contest, but have some max points left. Three of the final four teams can go, still the champion. So, I was talking to you a little bit prior. It's one of those things where you start a bracket challenge and then your mom, who has not watched a single second of college basketball all year, picking with her heart going back 30 years to college on teams she likes and doesn't like is winding up somehow in first in your bracket challenge. So it's always fun to get everybody together and do it. But hopefully we can kind of get back up the leaderboards.
Mom is kicking our butt, man. And it's the same old story every year. You guys, I'm sure, have the same stories out there with your friends and family that you compete against. And here at Fanatic Perspective, we're happy that y'all are competing with us in the bracket challenge. So I'll post some of the little things on social media of how people are doing. We are partnered up in that challenge with Last Stand Hats. One of our glorious sponsors of Fanatic Perspective, laststandhats.com/fanatic. Use the promo code Fanatic10 at checkout. Get 10% off on all your merch. They just dropped a Texas baseball hat today. I don't know if everybody saw it on social media. If you're not following Last Stand Hats, please go follow them. But they just dropped a really dope Texas baseball hat today that Mike's constantly working on new designs, new ideas. There's so much in the works going on at Last Stand Hats. But bracket contest has been really, really dope. Your boys in 89th place. We are down bad right now at Fanatic Perspective. But as Colin said, we got some back points. We got some teams that I had going far that are still alive, that have advanced. So we'll see how they do. And also our brand new sponsor, Aura. While we're here, let's get a little serious right now. Aura, brand new sponsor, Fanatic Perspective. They are an all-in-one digital security platform. So all of your needs, VPN services, identity threat protection, credit, protection, fraud alerts. They have a white glove team, US-based team, 24/7 services, everything you need. When I say all-in-one, I really, really do mean that. And right now, we're getting, some amazing discounts for our Fanatic Perspective users, aura.com/fanatic, but you're also going to be able to take advantage of a 14-day free trial if you sign up at Aura. So if you want to check out the services, if you've been looking for a reliable digital security platform for all of your devices and just to make sure you're covered and protected, I can't think of a better partner than Aura, and I really mean that sincerely. So check out those guys as well. Colin, let's talk ball, man. I want to get the emotional Colin, because it's been a minute, bro. It's been a minute since we went to the Sweet 16, and it's frustrating to say that as Texas basketball fans. But take me emotionally, and then take me to where you kind of are now as you're thinking about processing everything that we've seen over our first two victories over Colgate and Penn State.
Yeah, I think it's been really fun on the emotional side. I think most folks who know me personally know I'm pretty objective. It is, a lot of statistics, a lot of data that drive typically my emotions towards something. But I think when you look at historically what this basketball program has been from, when we were children, basically, when other folks are probably didn't have families, now have families and children. I was looking at something, but the most popular song the last time that we were playing in the second weekend was, I think, "Lovin' This Club." So I don't know if anybody wants to bring that one back, but it's been a long time. So, just kind of sitting down and watching the games with friends Thursday, and then Saturday night, and just getting to the end of Saturday night with the end of the game. It's just kind of relief and being ecstatic and happy and like just proud of kind of the guys and the basketball team and kind of the journey that's been this year, and all the time that's kind of passed from the last opportunity that we had to do this. So just kind of pure joy and happiness from kind of that emotional standpoint. I don't know about you, but that's kind of how I felt, and some of the folks that I watched the games with felt as well.
We did a spaces on Twitter after the we actually did a Twitter space after both games, but the Penn State one, and we were on there for like 3 hours. I mean, and we had at all times 50 to 60 people in the spaces. At one point it was over 100 people in the spaces, because that was how exciting it was. And just that sense of, it's not, if you want to be a serious basketball powerhouse, this isn't, this is not the end all be all, of course. But from a standpoint of just saying, this is something this entire season as Big 12 tournament champions with the winning, all, like you said, the journey, all those things in perspective, it is something to be proud of. And I think that was a sense of pride. Colin, going to the basketball side of things, we come back, we're down in that Penn State game. I'm looking at this too as we just won 2 basketball games 2 different ways. I mean, you look at how we beat Colgate and then what happened against Penn State. Those are 2 different basketball games. And to me, that gives me some encouragement and some hope of what we can see of being able to play multiple different styles and different types of basketball games moving forward as we get to play at Xavier. What have you seen from that regard? Now take me to your basketball mind.
Yeah, I think when you take a look at the games that we played, I would say specifically on the offensive ball, they were very different. Or offensive side of the ball, they were very different. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, they were very similar, right? When you look at both the teams that we played, we touched on kind of in the last episode in terms of what Colgate brought to the table, but that was one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the nation. When you look at Penn State, that was one of the best scoring teams in the nation, as well as one of the most experienced teams. I believe the most experienced team in kind of Ken Palm's rankings in college basketball as well. And you take a look at some of these statistics. I mean, Penn State shot the ball 1 for 13. That was us. 2 for 28 from 3. So that's around 28%, 41% from the field. And then when you take a look at the Colgate game, we held that team to 3 of 15, 20% from 3, 43% from the field. So the defense actually, I think, carried us in both games. What you saw on the offensive side of the ball was 2 completely different teams, right? A team that came out with Serge Ibaka. I think he made something of his first 7 threes in a row or 6 threes in a row. He wound up 7 for 10. But a team that shot 13 for 23 from 3, 56.5% there, 53% from the field. It's really rare that you'll shoot over your field goal percentage from the 3-point line. And then you take a look at what we did against Penn State, and it's 1 for 13 from 3, 50% from the field. It was one of those things where every 3 that went up, it found a way to get out of the basket. And it really did, to your point, kind of within those last 4 minutes when we got down 3, feel like it was another one of those times, right? I think when you take a look at the football team, you take a look at the basketball team over these, call it last 10 years.
Here we go again.
It always seems to be one of those moments, right? Here we go again. It's just not our night. And really credit to this team. And we touched on it in kind of the coaching conversation, but I think, a good amount of credit goes to kind of the coaching staff who kind of stepped up and really obviously had kind of the defensive game plan in place. But once they kind of saw that the threes weren't going, attacking the basket more, and then obviously, huge shout out to Dylan Disu, who really played his game of his life, as well as kind of what he's done kind of the last, call it, 7 games or so since the NCAA tournament, has just been kind of incredible basketball player. 14 for 20 from the field, 28 points, 10 rebounds, 2 steals, an assist. The guy was just lights out kind of for this basketball team and really carried them. So, I think 2 very different basketball games on the offensive side of of the floor, but I think we saw our team really step up on the defensive side of the floor, which kind of carried us to winning 2 very different basketball games.
Thank you for making that designation, because that I think that you hit the nail on the head in terms of they were different offensively, but defensively. I mean, we really and you're absolutely right. I was telling some of my A&M buddies because they got their they got blown into smithereens by Penn State and Andrew Funk and all those guys, and Pickett and all them were just getting what they wanted. But one of the things I was telling them was like, yeah, is it realistic that Penn State's going to shoot 70% in round 2? No. However, I was like, look, and Charles Barkley alluded to this at halftime, which is why I retweeted it. Like, Texas's three-point defense matters, and like you can some of that is our fault, right? Like I've commented on this in the spaces. Our active hands defensively, regardless of what coverage we're running, it is distracting the shooters. Just sight lines, just anything we can do to bother. The amount of pressure we're applying on the perimeter and running guys off the line. Yes, we've been susceptible to things in the paint and some of those things, but obviously the coaching staff, Rodney Terry and these guys have decided, I got to give this up to get this, right, defensively. And that's just how basketball works. You got to try to take something away. And Texas has done, really been consistent with that and not getting killed by that. If you're going to make a 3 on us, you're going to have to earn it. It wasn't going to be these clean looks. Andrew Funk, multiple times you had to see him take an extra dribble, right, to try to get more space. Those things are so I'm glad you made that point. Dylan Disu, I want to touch on that real quick. We cannot overstate 14 from 20 from the field. In a college basketball game, that's impressive. As a college big man, that's impressive. Because Colin, myself, you, Austin, Ryan, we were actually talking about this in our group chat about, the differences between the NBA, where bigs are really allowed to play, and college, where it's a lot more difficult to go off in college as a big. I mean, we saw that happen, unfortunately, with Purdue and some of the tactics that Tobin and FDU utilized against Zach Edey, right? And we see this happen all the time, which, to your point, I want to give you credit. You said that in our preview video of why you didn't like Purdue, because of the ability to take away the big in college if there's not the guard play to kind of balance out. And so what Dylan Disu did was remarkable. It was legendary to do that in the tournament under those circumstances when we needed it. We couldn't hit a shot. Like we got good looks. I didn't mind. Yeah. I know some of the things were forced, and maybe we can agree or disagree there. I'm not sure, but I didn't like. There were some threes we missed. We were like, I mean, how much space y'all want? You know what I mean? So I mean,
I completely agree with you. I mean, there were inside out shots where you tell your 7th grade team to take that shot, right? The balls come in, there's been a double, you've kicked it around 2 or 3 times, you're sitting there with a wide open Tyrese Hunter, Marcus Carr, Serge Jabari Rice, who was 7 for 10 last game, and it just felt like that lid was on the basket, man. So I totally agree with you. The shots just weren't going in.
So again, and the last thing I want to say about Disu, and this goes out to all of us out there, is just don't give up. When you get down in your career or you have some hardships that come your way, battling back from injury and not being 100%. I think Dylan Disu knows what he's capable of, because you're seeing him play with a confidence. That's my biggest takeaway from him, is that everything he's doing is decisive and with purpose. And you're seeing an array of moves. He didn't just score all dunks, right? It wasn't like Kevon Looney in the NBA playoffs last year. We had a 24-point game against the Mavericks, but everything was like fed to him with layups and dunks. We saw Dylan Disu hit turnaround jumpers. We saw right shoulder, left hand jump hook, other way, left shoulder, right hand jump hook. The ability to finish through contact, all sorts. And then at the end of the game, he's getting buckets to close. Like, he was a closer.
Yeah, closer. Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, He has a floater that Steph Curry may be able to learn some things from. Like I've never seen a big man with that much touch, both off the glass and just kind of on his runners as well. Like it's a very interesting push shot that he's developed, and he kind of spoke to the media about it, but it has really, really worked out for him the last, call it 7-8 games.
Anytime we can win games like that when, our shooters are down. Marcus didn't have a great game. I thought he passed the ball better against Penn State than he did against Colgate, as well as he shot it against Colgate. But Serge Rice, that's probably the worst you'll see him play. I expect Serge to play very, very well against Xavier. And we had, and Timmy Allen, I want to say this before we move on to Xavier. We got to give Timmy Allen some credit. If I get another DM, if I get another comment about, is this team better without Timmy Allen? People stop it. Okay. Colin, you're the basketball expert. Can you speak to the defensive aspect that he brought against Jalen Pickett? Because I feel like that's being lost by some Texas fans here. And I'm getting really annoyed with the amount of questioning with Timmy Allen.
Yeah. So I think there have been a few times in terms of this year that you've seen what Timmy Allen is as a basketball player this year versus last year. I think the first was the multiple times that he guarded Jalen Wilson early this year. He obviously didn't get to play in the Big 12 championship game, but I think both times he did a pretty good job on Jalen, and then specifically against Jalen Pickett. So he is by far one of the best collegiate basketball players in the country. When you take a look at just the landscape, I would say that he may be the best guard in all of college basketball in terms of the whole package, being able to kind of play bully ball, get his points, and then open up the floor for what Penn State likes to do, which is shoot the three. Timmy Allen did such a good job that we were able to kind of shut down, stay on shooters, and not allow them to get those same shots that they got against A&M. Now, it was very similar in terms of Texas and Penn State, both game ones being lights out in terms of shooting the three ball, and then kind of abysmal in game two. I think kind of on the Texas end, that was something we've seen before, right? We're not expecting this team to shoot 56% or 55% from three. We are expecting a team like Penn State to shoot 40-45% from three. Timmy Allen did such a good job in terms of guarding Jalen Pickett. They didn't have those same opportunities that they had kind of in that first round game against A&M. And that's a huge kind of attribute to why we were able to win that basketball game. And one other thing that I kind of want to mention on Timmy is not just kind of the basketball aspect. If you listen to any of his media interviews, and I'll say the same thing about Dylan and Serge Rice specifically as well, is they have a lot of pride for playing for the University of Texas. It's, hearing them talk about how they appreciate when Kevin Durant comes and plays open gym, or, LaMarcus, tweets about him, or they make these comparisons. Obviously TJ Ford's around the program quite a lot as well, but they really appreciate that. Serge Rice, Timmy, Dylan all really appreciate kind of the pride that is kind of University of Texas. And I think you see a lot of that out there when they're kind of playing the game as well. So big ups to Timmy for, not having as much on the offensive side of the floor this year. Maybe 2 years prior, say at a Utah where he averaged, close to 20 points a game last year, where he was kind of a main option in basketball games as well, to this year kind of really taking on his role and being kind of a premier defender in college basketball.
Well said. And with that, and thank you for laying out all of that, not just what he's giving us on the floor, but off the court as well. Let's move on to Xavier. We have business to take care of on Friday in Kansas City. Same building where we won the Big 12, right? The Big 12 tournament, right?
Yeah, T-Mobile Arena.
Yep. So we get to go back to a familiar place, and we're playing, in my opinion, a very good basketball team. And in our bracket, or in not our bracket, in our region, in the Midwest region, really the only getting to this point in terms of the season, I understand there were some upsets with, some certain teams in the region, but for the most part, you're going to have a Houston team playing a 1 seed Houston playing a 5 seed Miami and a 2 seed Texas playing a 3 seed Xavier. So outside of maybe however you had Miami, Indiana, it's been chalk in terms of getting to this point. And that's because these teams have been consistent and Xavier had their scare in the first round. I expect them to play a lot better against Pitt. I know we were all talking, we were all scouting both teams, and to be fair. And as Austin always says, you can't, call out your matchup, get ahead of that. But Xavier's a better basketball team. It's just the whole way around. They're a team that scores a lot of points, averaging 81 points on the season. They got to their number against Pitt. Now we'll get into some of the dynamics there, but the amount of different guys that they have that step up and the versatility of guys and their storylines here, obviously the big one being between Rodney Terry and Sule Boom, who both were at UTEP many moons ago. And because of the portal and everything else, here they are facing off against each other in the Sweet 16. And Sule Boom's their, Xavier's leading scorer. You have a Kunkel who got hot, like we saw guys get hot before in the previous game. But, Jake Nungi down low can score. They've got dynamic guys. I mean, I think 4 different guys over 14 points a game with free the other guy that's out, that's not even playing for them right now. But Xavier's a tough squad. And Sean Miller, I respect the basketball coach in the college basketball community. What are you seeing? What are the keys here for you, Colin? What are you looking to see from Texas and how we can secure victory and advance to the Elite Eight?
Yeah, so almost very similarly to our other 2 games, which gives me a lot of confidence in kind of going into this one, is Xavier's a very good offensive basketball team. But Xavier's not that good of a defensive basketball team. So very similar to Colgate and Penn State, this team can go on scoring runs, but they're pretty likely to give up a good amount of points as well. When you kind of talk about their roster, so Zach Freemantle is not going to play, probably won't play the rest of the tournament is my understanding there. Sule Boom, who you kind of alluded to, it's amazing that these players are still in college when you go back to, Rodney Terry being his head coach at UTEP. So Jack Nungi played at Iowa with Luka Garza prior, Kunkel, Jerome Hunter, and kind of that's really it for them. I think when you kind of look at the weaknesses of this team is their kind of depth relative to Texas. So you've obviously seen, Christian Bishop, Brock, Dylan Mitchell, Arterio Morris all get burned. There's going to be 9 guys that play for Texas. There's going to be 6 guys that play on the floor for Xavier with, besides Sule Boom, their best player not playing. Again, shoot the 3 ball very, very well in the season, around 55%, I think. But they've only shot the 3 around 27% their last 3 games. So haven't particularly been strong shooting the ball, which is kind of why they were in that dogfight with Kennesaw State for a while. I think they were down 13 the second half. They obviously kind of rallied and came back to win that game, and then beat a very, very bad defensive team in Pittsburgh in that second round. But it was
gross, man.
It was a bad basketball game. That's a very bad basketball game. But in terms of kind of what we're bringing to the table versus what they're bringing to the table, I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for us for kind of a Sweet 16 matchup. Obviously looking forward to seeing how we kind of game plan for both depth and kind of running shooters off the line again. This is a bigger team than we played kind of the first 2 rounds as well. So kind of really have to make sure we're good on that defensive glass as well. I think there will be less offensive rebounding opportunities, which, kind of throughout the Big 12, we didn't see a lot of from this team. We saw a lot of that in both round 1 and round 2. I think those chances may be limited kind of against the Xavier team as well.
Yeah, Nungi's been playing good. And I mean, and when you look at Pitt had a lot of length as well. Now, Federico got hurt in that game, but still some of the length that they had with the twins and some other guys in there trying to lean on Nungi. But he was, I think the common theme that I'm seeing from Xavier when I watch them is when it's good, it's good. When it's good, when they're flowing, when Kunkel's shooting the ball like that from the outside, they pass the ball a lot. The ball moves, the ball hops. And I see, a team that can go on a crazy spurt, like you said, Kennesaw State, you're down 13, but because you got spurt ability, all this type of stuff, they can immediately get back in the game because they do have those offensive tendencies that allow for them to be as effective as they've been over the course of the season. But I saw multiple things. First of all, Pitt didn't have the personnel to get themselves back in the basketball game because the opportunities were all over the place. Xavier was trying to hand Pitt the game, especially as well as Kunkel shot the ball in the first half. He disappeared in the second half. Sule Boom disappeared in the first half. He came to life at the end of the game in the second half. They can be so inconsistent even within the basketball game. The thing I look at with Texas, we have consistently played defense. That's one thing where I'm like, all right, that doesn't we're not Jekyll Hyde and all up and down like that with our defensive effort and whatnot. We can get into, I think where we get frustrated with some of the things is more lineup related with Texas when we go with certain lineups and matchups and things of that sort. But the effort, the intensity is always there. With Xavier, all that passing, when it looks good, it looks good. But then they turn the ball over a million times all of a sudden. They don't like physicality. As soon as Pitt turned up a little bit of pressure to get back in that game, multiple turnovers, multiple opportunities where Texans get out on the open floor potentially in this game. I am curious about the matchup for Disu. We spent a lot of time talking about Disu and how he'll handle some of the, now that he's a made man now, people are looking for him now.
Yeah, right.
And that's going to be an interesting matchup with Nunji and the guys down low. But I just think that we can really show some physicality and really make Xavier, if they play that sporadic brand, I see a challenge here for Xavier to get past us. I hope I'm not sounding overconfident. I hope we don't sound overconfident, Gollum, but the matchup's the matchup.
Yeah, one, losing anybody who averages 15 points a game, 8 rebounds, 3 assists is not good for your basketball team. Take away Serge Abari-Rice from this basketball team and see where we'd be. Now, this is a much different player. Zach Fremantle is a big and a true big, can go score down low and body people up. And I think having him not be in the game is a huge win for us because I would say we traditionally struggle with true bigs who, if they can get position like a Zach Edey, we're in big trouble. Not having him is a huge plus kind of for the matchup. And again, you can pass the ball around, and if you don't go score the basketball and you go on those long scoring droughts and you're not a very good defensive basketball team, this game can get to 15, 20 points if we're scoring the basketball pretty quickly. You saw that against Kennesaw State. You saw that when kind of Pitt came back. This is a very susceptible team to giving up points and giving up points very quickly. So ultimately it'll be, are we going to play the defensive basketball that we saw throughout the entire season? Or are you going to see the defensive basketball we played one time against K-State at home when we gave up 116 points?
I hope those days are behind us. I think
we're to the point where we can all feel okay about that. But I think we're in for a pretty good matchup on Friday evening.
Yeah, I do as well. And I want to go ahead and kind of preview what we could see the next round, because we're not going to do a video in between Friday and when we have an opportunity to play again, if we earn that opportunity. Texas has to go out there and win this and play, like you said, play the same intensity. We have more depth. And quite frankly, I think we're just more consistent than they are. And I think we'll have an opportunity to get to the Elite Eight and face the winner of Houston and Miami. I know how I want to. I mean, I just think that the stars are aligning for a Texas Houston matchup. I've been saying this before the tournament started, and I'm not the only person that feels this way, because I think every single one of us had Texas Houston Elite Eight in our bracket, and what that means for both teams trying to get to Houston for this Final Four, and the emotion and Houston coming to the Big 12. Like, there's so much on the table, and so many people want to see this matchup. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's going to be anticipated. I hope we get to, I want the easiest route for Texas. Let me not trip. But if it ends up being Texas Houston, that I mean, dude, that's that's must-see TV. And for the right to play in Houston, Texas for the Final Four. I mean, you can't give any thoughts there on Houston, Miami, or just the matchup in general for Elite Eight.
Yeah, I think this is a matchup where somebody to follow if you like college basketball is a guy named John Rothstein. He does some college basketball work for CBS Sports.
I like John.
His kind of motto for Miami is more guards than Shawshank. And the team does. I mean, when you look at Isaiah Wong, who, 16 points a game, almost 45% from the field, very, very good free throw shooter. And then you kind of look at a guy like Nigel Pack, who, if you follow Big 12 basketball, you kind of remember who Nigel Pack is. If you don't, Nigel Pack is a very, very, very good point guard who transferred from Kansas State after 1 year playing there, plays for Jimmy Larrañaga now. And they have another big inside O'Meary, who I think he's only like 6'6", 6'7", maybe 6'8", but probably rebounds better than most people I've seen in college basketball this year. Will absolutely go battle the Houston Bigs for every offensive and defensive rebound. So this is a Miami team who can score the basketball, who can play defense. When you look at Houston, they have been pretty susceptible this tournament. I think both games you've looked at and been like, especially the first half, like, who is this Houston team, right? You kind of take a look at, obviously, the second half versus Auburn, where they were down. They obviously came back and won that basketball game because Auburn couldn't score the basketball. But this is a team that can be beat. And you saw this a few times this year, specifically that Temple game, and a few other times kind of in a weaker conference where, this very well could be a Texas-Miami kind of Elite Eight game.
Yeah.
And to your point on us wanting it to be the easiest matchup for Texas, I think we match up really, really well against that Miami team. Ultimately, do I think Houston wins that game? I think most of the projections, most of the simulations that I've looked at have them winning by 10 plus. That spreads about 7. So again, kind of the smarter guys in Vegas kind of think that Houston team should win pretty easily as well. But again, this is a Miami team who's pretty experienced and have guys who can go score that basketball. So again, really looking forward to watching that game as well.
If you're Kelvin Sampson, they needed just to survive in advance, though, because Houston has been very, very, very banged up. They have a lot of guys playing that were, they had guys playing that were injured, and he made no bones about that. I mean, he's been on that since they lost to Memphis in their conference championship, in the conference tournament, right? So just having another week to heal up and get some rest. I have gotten a little bit of the flip the switch vibe from Houston in the first 2 rounds. We can't ignore that. I think you're right. And Miami's backcourt, Houston has to play better basketball to beat Miami this week. I think they will, but they have to play, more of what we saw from Houston throughout the regular season, where they, at points dominant, number 1 KenPom team, just out here hooping, right? If they get back and the way that they play defensively and some of the things that Jarris Walker does, right? If they get back to that brand of basketball, which I think they can against Miami, but they need to get healthier. But that Texas Houston matchup is I mean, again, the Twitter will be crazy if we get that. I mean, that's what we were kind of looking for with Texas versus Texas A&M, but A&M wasn't interested in showing up to the party in the second round. Let's talk about the rest of the tournament and these matchups. Before we get to matchups, what were any teams that you were just shocked that they got eliminated so early, or like? I know it's easy to say Purdue and FDU, but I honestly, I thought Purdue was fraudulent, even going into Miami or Memphis and FAU. I thought they would, so I don't know. What are your thoughts there in terms of anybody that caught your attention?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it in our kind of last video on Purdue. It's just a team where if you have really young guards and you have one very talented big, Purdue and Indiana were the teams that I mentioned, both out of the tournament very early, right? And didn't play to their seat. I think the other big one is Arizona. I think you take a look at that Princeton game, you take a look at how Arizona can score the basketball usually, and ultimately what that game played out to be. I think it was like 4 points in the last 6 minutes of the game or something like that. That was a head scratcher for me. I didn't think they had any business going out that early in the tournament. I don't think many people did. I didn't have them going to my Final Four, but I had them going to my Elite Eight, and I think a lot of people had them in their Final Four or national championship game. So that was an experienced squad that I just didn't see lose in the first round. And again, that's some of the fun of kind of March Madness. When I take a look at kind of the rest of the bracket, look, when you speaking about Xavier, if you turn them over, and nobody did this better than Shaka Smart did in the Big East this year, but Tom Izzo outcoaching Shaka Smart in the second round, I think is what it is. I did not think that they were going to go out that early. The only reason I was picking them to go out that early is because I have personal scars that I'm still picking at those scabs, and they keep bleeding all over me with the time that he had here. I think that was a surprise kind of a game for me as well.
I just want to touch on one
that,
thing. I want to touch on one thing with Marquette and Michigan State in particular. I agree with Coach Izzo and the job he did against Shaka. Tyler Kolek did not play up to standards in both games. In both games, because even the game they had against Vermont, he was bad. He was one of their worst players against Vermont. And I thought that, okay, he got his bad game out the way. He'll play well. He'll look like the freaking Big East player of the year. And not only did he not shoot the ball, like that's not all of his game, obviously. He was making bad
turnovers.
The turnovers. Yeah. I mean, and it just was like, he looked like a sophomore all of a sudden. And he hadn't looked like that all year, because going back and looking at Marquette and Shaka's team, I'm like, okay, they're all freshmen and sophomore. Like the only person that was a junior was Prosper. But they've played so well together all year, where I'm like, I didn't factor in that experience like that. But then when you go up a veteran Michigan State team, veteran coaching Tom Izzo, and your point guard is irresponsible with the basketball like that, and you have 14, 15 turnovers, your ass is getting bounced. And that's what happened. So I just wanted to, the Tyler Kolek thing, I need to see him get it back next season for Marquette. But I'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it was he played really poorly. I think the biggest thing that made me chuckle was they come out of the under 4 timeout. It is a very close game at this point. Michigan State has not gone on the run, and they said that they were doing breathing exercises in the huddle.
Yeah, I heard
and
that.
It made me laugh. I'm not going to lie to you.
I heard that.
I guess
I didn't want to hear it, but I heard
Arizona and Purdue were the bigger teams that I looked at that were kind of head scratchers this tournament. I think we kind of turn to Thursday and Friday's games. Ultimately, you take it. We kind of touched on it. That South region where Alabama is at an overall number 1 seed. Could they have been gifted kind of an easier path to the Final Four? I mean, you get to play a San Diego State team who beat Charleston, then beat Furman.
Furman.
So, I mean, and again, this is the Mountain West Conference that didn't win any other tournament game, right? Then you've got Creighton and Princeton. So, your 2's out, your 3's out already. That Creighton team is good, but I would expect them to kind of roll Princeton, and then Alabama is significantly more athletic than that Creighton team. You take a look at our side of the bracket, which we already touched on. We're both kind of thinking that Houston-Texas game kind of shows up in the Elite Eight. Then you've got a real interesting kind of West bracket, right, with Kansas losing to Arkansas. So you're setting up kind of an Arkansas-UConn Sweet 16 game, and then you've got a Gonzaga-UCLA game that I think is extremely intriguing. I think that's probably the best game of the weekend that I would like to watch. Ultimately, I actually have UConn, and I had TCU actually in my bracket, but kind of looking at it now, I actually have UConn playing Gonzaga. I first year that I actually had picked against Gonzaga early rounds, and Mark Few came back and bit me this time. And then you take a look at kind of the East, where Purdue got eliminated by SVU team, who the most improbable upset of all of kind of college basketball in terms of the NCAA tournament, I think, percentage wise. So, great job by them. And he's moved on to be the coach at Iona. Is that right? He was hired today by the program.
Yeah.
Yep.
Iona.
Yep. So congrats to him, and congrats to that basketball team for their win. So you've got a Florida Atlantic team who's kind of snuck by Memphis, and then actually was in a game with FDU for a while there, playing our old friend Rick Barnes. And so, I would say Rick's got a pretty good matchup to the Final Four as well. But, credit to Jerome Tang. I think what they were able to do against a Kentucky team that was favored, that everybody had picked to beat them, fantastic job by Marquise Noel, Keontae Johnson, and Jerome for getting them to the Sweet 16 as well. And, I think that K-State, Michigan State game will be an entertaining watch as well, with Walker and Noel kind of going at each other most of the game, and Keontae and Aiken as well at Michigan State playing against one another. So a lot of really good Sweet 16 games across the country this weekend.
I want to touch on two things you just said out of the East region. So number one, congratulations to Rick Barnes. We just talked about one former Texas coach. Let's go on to the other former Texas coach. I hate Duke. I'm unapologetic about my hate for Duke. I prayed on their downfall that morning. I woke up. I felt great about it. Thank Jesus I'm here. And then went on prayed that Duke would lose. Rick Barnes, unapologetically, at halftime says, "We're going to make them feel us," and smirks at the camera and walks off. And that's literally how Tennessee played that entire basketball game. They were there to fight, okay? They made no bones about it. My boy Flip, I was proud of Flip to try to fight the good fight, get hit in the face multiple times. One would say dirty play, but that was a game where they were like, we're men. And we're gonna make this like a 1980s Big East game. Like, no, you're like, every single time anybody got in the paint, we were talking about it. I think that was the game we probably texted about the most in our group chat, because it was fascinating to see that physicality against a very talented Duke team. Like, Whitehead shot the ball well, right? Flip, when he could get to his stuff without getting hit in the face, was fine. But at the end of the day, Duke just could not get anything going in transition with Proctor, who was the one person that seemed to really man up to that level of competition. Obviously the foul trouble with Roach, but Rick, that was a classic Rick Barnes. Hey, we're gonna have some elbow grease out here today. I think Kansas State is going to the Final Four out of this region, though, Colin.
Okay.
I really like what I saw from them in their Kentucky game. I know people are blowing up about Coach Cal. Yet again, we fall short here in Kentucky. Not the standard. Sheboy, all-time great player, one of their great players for them. You don't really come up with much. I thought Kansas State was just a better basketball team in that game, though. I thought it was more of a Kansas State problem for Kentucky than Kentucky being their own worst enemy, if that makes sense. And I'm with you. I've been really impressed with Coach Tang, what he's done with the program, the guard play. I think Noel has a much better game than Tyler Kolek did against Michigan State. Um, if I had to look at this bracket again, I really, really like Kansas State. And I think I slept on it a little bit when we did our preview, me personally. So those are my 2 cents about that East region, brother.
I like Tennessee to come out, but also I won't put it past Rick to not score more than 45 points in the Elite Eight game against Kansas State or Michigan State, whoever shows up. It really is whatever refs that they're going to send to that gym, because Tennessee could have fouled out all their guys.
That's my problem, though. Is the ref? I don't know
game.
who's going to call the game.
Who's going to show up? But I do have K-State and now Tennessee playing in that Elite Eight game, and I do think if it's a simulated game, Tennessee probably wins that matchup more times than they lose it. But again, it totally depends on what rock fight Tennessee shows up with. If it's going to be the refs are allowing them to elbow folks in the face and hand check them while they try to drive and get to spots, Tennessee very well could be playing whoever out of that South region in that Final Four game. So that East region will be fun to watch, both in that FAU Tennessee game and then maybe a more clean basketball game in K-State and Michigan State in that second game.
I agree with you about Gonzaga UCLA being the best matchup in the overall bracket. I told you guys in the preview video, I felt good about seeing a Gonzaga UCLA game. I got some pushback there from some of you guys in the comments and people that have been DMing me. So I told you all Gonzaga UCLA was coming, and Drew Timmy was remarkable in that TCU game. This is his last run. You can tell he's on that last ride. Last dance, I should say, type feel for Mr. Timmy. And I've seen some maturation with Gonzaga this year after we played them very, very early. And that's still a team that's a really tough game, though, against UCLA, either one of those games. And then Arkansas, Coach Musselman and his antics, don't let that fool you guys. He's been coaching his butt off. And I think the emotions that you saw from the Arkansas kids and their emotions after the game were more so about them coming together, because when you have people that are projected to go high in the draft like that and you have multiple guys, it's hard to get on the same page. We see it every year in college basketball. Pick a team where it's hard to, Anthony Black's coming in. Ricky Council's there. You got Nick Smith Jr. and the NBA loves him. But how do we get on the same page and share the basketball? So for them to get to this point, I do think they're going to lose to UConn. I really like what I saw from UConn in their second round game. So we'll see. Colin, is there any last question for you, because we got to tie off here. Was there any team that you still have that you would change based upon what you've seen? Or has anybody changed your opinion in general before we tie off?
Yeah, so going back, my Final Four was Alabama, Duke, Texas, and UConn, with Alabama beating UConn in the national championship. I think that Texas UConn game will be a lot closer than what I thought it was if Dylan Disu continues to play at the level that he has. Again, we may not make it to the Final Four, but I do give us a much better chance than kind of I originally had in my mind playing against Adama Sanogo, who is an absolute beast at UConn, kind of in that Final Four game that I had matched up. The other thing I would say is to continue to give Mark Few his flowers. That Gonzaga team could go win the national championship this year too. When you have a guy like Drew Timmy, who it's spectacular, the difference between watching a Drew Timmy and watching a Zach Edey and Trace Jackson Davis. These are all very, very dominant big men in college basketball, but the way that Drew Timmy does it is just, it feels different. He's going to go get his points. and he's going to open up the floor, but it feels like he does it in a much different way, as well as I think he leads that team because he's been in college for 15 years or whatever it's been. I think they've gone to 8 straight Sweet 16s, and he may have been a part of all 8 of them. But I think he does a fantastic job for Mark Few and that Gonzaga team. So, they very well could come out of that West region as well. So I would say, looking at us and how we played, I've been really impressed. And then, that Gonzaga team out of that West region as well has been a team I've enjoyed watching. So we'll see what happens this weekend.
As you said last week, Christmas in March. This is
my favorite time of the year. 40 hours of watching basketball last Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So, I'll sit down and not get as much as, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because there's not many matchups, but enjoy it nonetheless.
Absolutely. And what a first weekend it was. Be remiss if we didn't even mention the Furman, Virginia game that we did throw out there in our video. We said, hey, everybody talking about Furman going to beat Virginia. And sure enough, and the way that happened and the craziness. And that was, I think, our first completed game. So we already, that right there set the tone.
All-time collapse, T.A. Clark.
But Colin, it's fun to have these type of episodes and podcasts when your team does what Texas did in the first weekend, and just feeling good about where we're at. So hopefully we can have the full crew back next week with Ryan and Austin, and we're hopefully doing a Final Four preview.
Third weekend. Nothing would bring me more joy. My girlfriend will hate that, but it is nothing would bring me more joy.
I appreciate it, man. And again, thank you to our sponsors. Actually, thank you, Colin, for coming on and doing this. This was I love talking ball with you, and it's always a blast. So you guys, thank y'all for, you starting to develop some fans in the comments as well. So we'll keep it going. But I also want to give a thank you to our sponsors. Last Stand Hats, laststandhats.com/fanatic. So hit that promo code Fanatic10 at checkout, get 10% off on all merch, apparel, the whole bit there. And our brand new sponsor, Aura, which is a all-in-one digital services platform, identity threat protection, VPN services, credit monitoring, 24/7 help desk. At your, everything you need under, device protection services is all there available with Aura. One of our partners at Aura is Iron Man himself, Robert Downey Jr., who just spoke on behalf of Aura at South by Southwest. And what we're doing right now, since we're just now partnered up with these guys, Aura.com/fanatic, we're offering a 14-day free trial with discounts if you sign up fully, but 14-day free trial. Check out that package. There's individual package, couple package, family package for however many devices you need, and just making sure that you are fully secure. There's so many threats out there in the cyber world today as we advance in society. So important to have that with Aura. Colin, thank you again. Guys, remember, we are all, bleeding orange on Friday, and I think we're going to be okay. So remember, horns always up.
Welcome.